Please welcome Hitha and Kristin. Come on, guys, clap it up.
Hello. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here again with everyone. How's everyone doing? Well? Everyone good? Yeah? Energized? Get your stuff from Row so you're feeling peppy? I am so excited to be here today with Kristin Sword, right? She is the head of growth marketing for anti-aging at Row. And Nick was absolutely right. It's not just for men, it's for women too. So we're gonna talk about CAC, but before I start to really get into that with Kristin, why don't you tell everyone who is not familiar with Row exactly what the company does?
Totally. Also, hello, everyone. Hi, friends. I appreciate everyone being here. I feel like the two worst sessions to have are right before lunch and right before happy hour, so appreciate you giving up this time. For those of you who do not know, Row is a patient-first platform that really seeks to give patients what they need conveniently and easily online. We do everything from diagnosis all the way through to delivery, and that is because we were able to consolidate and have vertical integration amongst our labs, doctors, and then, of course, our services. And as mentioned, we have several offerings that we provide. While we started as Roman and are often known for Roman, we have sexual health, fertility health, skincare and dermatology or anti-aging, and then weight loss, hence all the Ozempic jokes. It's lovely to be here.
Hence the reason why Nick wanted to pull an informal poll about who's taking Ozempic right now. And no one has to raise it's private stuff, right? Which leads me to my next question. I mean, this is a very patient-driven platform, right? This is all about patient care. You have doctors on staff, but there are a lot of platforms that are doing this. How are you preventing customer attrition, given that there's a lot of ways you can get anti-aging stuff?
It's so true, and I think this is the ultimate question for everyone. We're all answering the question, and ultimately it's hard, right? But at the end of the day, I believe it really comes down to the products and services that you provide. If you provide a good product and you really give patients what they're looking for, which for us is convenience, ease of access, and privacy, we're able to then keep and retain that experience. It's like that classic product manager pitch, right? It takes 10x the effort to get someone to change once they're on your platform. So it's really about effective acquisition and then providing that value so that they stay.
CAC is also obviously a metric that people use to measure success, right? Some people will say, well, it doesn't even matter, but in this case it does. What are some of the other metrics that you're using? Well, let's talk about CAC, right? Obviously, the session is about CAC, so let's talk about that and how important is it to measuring your growth and that customer retention?
Yeah, I mean, everyone in here who's a marketer, we all hear about CAC. In fact, I'm pretty sure I hear it in my dreams because you just hear it so frequently. I think the reoccurring nightmare I have is how do we lower CAC but also grow volume, right? It's like the classic question. But I think really when we think about the metrics that you're looking at, it is thinking about what you need for the business. CAC is super important, and we know that, but what are the goals for your business or even the product line within your business? I can say, depending on the certain products that we have, there are some products that we're looking to aggressively grow, right? So you may have more flexibility on CAC and volume, versus others serve different purposes for us. So perhaps we focus more on the contribution margin and the profitability of those products. So I think that, yes, CAC is certainly important, and we're gonna dive into that and really sort of talk about the layers and the tactics of it. But ultimately, when framing what is important to the business, you have to know what your goals are, and you need to align your tactics, your product lines, to what the purpose is they serve to the ultimate goal of that business.
These costs can really get up there though, right? You're talking about CAC and, you know, in an ideal world, everyone would have a limitless budget that they could spend on this. So what are you all doing to reduce CAC? And I'm just going to throw a statistic out for everyone. In addition to having a research firm, I'm also a fellow at a think tank in DC called Data Catalyst Institute, and we did some research on digital advertising, so on small businesses, which I know a lot of the audience has comprised of. So just to give you guys an idea, about 29% of small businesses spend more than $100,000 on marketing expense, and 61% spend around $10,000. And this is small business. Now, how do you then, I mean, these are really small expenses, and this is digital ads, but when you're dealing with that kind of marketing budget, how do you go ahead and reduce a CAC? And where do you start when you're dealing with those kind of numbers?
Yeah, I think this really depends on where your business is at in its life cycle, right? I think at Row, or if you look even at Row, right, weight loss, for example, is relatively new. Ozempic, Wegovy, those things are new to the market in what we've been talking about. But Roman has been around for quite some time. So as you think about where your business is at in its life cycle and the role that you play in the ecosystem and your competitors, I think that's really where you look at how might I reduce CAC and what are realistic expectations, right? So for example, if you have a newer business, like the startups you were asking of, like, how do I, as a young startup, really break into this space when everything is so expensive? I mean, the answer is, if you are an early stage startup, let's say 0 to 1 or even 1 to 10 Series A trying to scale, it's challenging, right? It is challenging to compete with bigger budgets in general, especially with rising CPMs. You need to be efficient with the things that you do, and frankly, you need to take bigger swings, especially in early stages. Bigger swings are super, super important beyond and above iterative changes that matter more when you're working with larger numbers and basis points. But in that early stage, you have to be willing to not only take those swings, but then try to find a niche that really works for you, right? I've been talking to a couple of my friends who are in true 0 to 1 early stage startups, and they've really been trying to say, like, what is the thing that'll break through the noise, not just on paid, but in organic, and trying to find those niches for them. On a Row side, when we talk about fighting back higher CACs, it's a different conversation. When you can still be a startup, but a bit more established, and you're playing a little bit of offense in addition to defense, it's thinking strategically about the customer journey and the funnel itself, and where you have the highest opportunity, where you have the highest competition, and where the white space is to really grow and take back space. This is such a bad analogy, which, sit with me long enough and you're gonna hear plenty of bad analogies. I think about the movie 300, when they were like moving on the cliff and like slowly pushing people off the cliff. It's like inch by inch pushing things forward, and that's what you need to do even when you already have territory if you're looking to expand. And it's looking under each of the rocks of your own funnel, of your own channels, to really figure out, where am I gonna put my time and my opportunity there, since there are infinite options and limited time.
That seems like that is extremely time consuming. And I know I'm speaking to a bunch of entrepreneurs, and you're probably saying, yeah, welcome to my life. This is all I do, is just spend a lot of time looking at customers, acquiring customers, trying to find specific tactics on how to get that specific customer interested. The conversation around anti-aging has become so prevalent, and especially as we're seeing a lot of celebrities, be forthcoming or not about what they are using to turn back that clock. I mean, we've always seen this in media, but now it is such a conversation. People are having free conversations about that. How has that helped your business at Row? Because Row's been around a lot longer than before this conversation has started about taking Ozempic, or, I mean, there's a technical, it's
GLP-1.
GLP-1s, right? So there's a whole host of a Wegovy, that kind of thing, and I don't want to have this whole conversation about that. But how has that helped the hunt for customers?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not surprised that weight loss is a conversation topic here. It's a hot one. And I'm just going to plug that I see the director of growth and marketing for weight loss in the crowd. And, you can go ask him questions later if you really want to dig in there. But when you talk about, I think, two things. One is, how do you break through in an anti-aging space where we are seeing this become more and more prevalent, whether that's how our body looks or how my skin is aging. I think that, again, ultimately, you're right. It is a super crowded market, and we are seeing this transition, at least from a Rose standpoint, from, let's call it makeup and beauty to what we would call low maintenance to be high maintenance, meaning this trend of I invest so much in my routine, in my skincare, so that I can wake up in the morning, put on my Supergoop sunscreen, throw on some mascara, and walk out the door with that Alicia Keys natural look. And so we are seeing that transition and really looking at this customer, and I think this is what it comes down to, is really knowing who your customer is and what they want. I can say with confidence that we have spent the time and the effort knowing what she wants in anti-aging, understanding the ingredients that matter, understanding how knowledgeable she is and why she came to us, and really being focused and clear and consistent as a brand in speaking to her and using those lenses in all of the touch points, whether landing pages or ads that we create. And I think that is one of the ways that you can hone in on your time, because you're right. Like, the biggest issue that we all have is not just a limit in budget, it's really time, right? I can do 1,000 different things. I spend 25% of my time trying to figure out why conversion dropped on that one SEM campaign yesterday for no reason. And it's how do we become super, super focused on not only who this customer is, but how do I effectively spend that time? And then how do I offboard the things that are more distracting, like the business as usual things that need to happen, but don't require my strategic brain power, and being thoughtful about where I put that time, especially at an early stage.
We were talking before we got on stage about the different products that you all have, and I think you kind of mentioned it here, but when it comes to CAC and those products, how do you position those products for the most growth you can get out of the products that you are featuring, let's say on your website or in different platforms?
Yeah, so when we think about CAC specifically, I'm going to speak now to the skincare and anti-aging portion. We have several products within our portfolio, and while that customer is very similar across each of them, we look specifically at, again, like how much market share this product has, how much room it has to grow, and how much are we willing to invest to find out. So a tactical example, we early this year, late last year, launched a product called Upneek, which is non-surgical eyelid lifting. It makes your eyes brighter and wider and bigger, and they're just eye drops, and they're great. And this is a newer product for us. So in the beginning, we knew we had a target CAC, but we also knew we needed to be willing to invest up to a certain amount to say, all right, we are going to test and learn. Right. We are going to figure out this market, and we are willing to invest X to figure this out over Y time frame. And at that point, then we can start to establish what a realistic goal looks like for this product. But I think it is incredibly important to set that expectation early. If you have something new, if you have something in the genesis, you have to be willing to spend a little to figure it out. You have to be willing to learn, and really, again, going back to all the other tactics that we mentioned before, then hone in, then focus, then really amplify, and then get to know your customer.
So the key takeaway too is to make sure that you put that money aside. If you're creating a marketing budget, put that money aside for testing, because that is one of the ultimate most important things to really hone into who your customer is. You want to make sure that you know who that customer is. Doesn't matter if you're a $50 million in revenue company or a $3 million in revenue company. Put that money aside so you can test that product. That is ultimately what became very successful for you all with Upneek.
Definitely. I think that even in an environment where I all know we're pulling back on costs, we're trying to be more efficient. CPMs are more expensive. You're constantly talking to finance about how do I make this more profitable. I think it is super important to remember that testing needs to be considered as a part of that. And oftentimes, it really, again, it depends on the businesses and where they're at. And Ro is so large and complex that I don't necessarily think it applies here. But in the past, we've actually carved out specific testing budgets as a certain percent, anywhere from 10 to 20% of overall budget, and didn't even hold it against CAC because we just counted it as a loss, but a known loss that would then funnel in to the low CAC expectations that we expected from our business as usual campaigns. And I think it's incredibly important to fight for that and make sure that you have that in your arsenal, because if you are not continuing to test and iterate, even the things that have working will eventually degrade, and then you're going to be stuck in that race for market share.
So we have about 4 more minutes left, and I want to really get to, as small startups or small businesses that have less than 5 million in revenue or less than 2 million in revenue, what can they do? And you kind of outlined it right now, but what can they do right now when they leave Grow today to start really focusing on making sure their CAC is not super, super expensive?
Man, honestly, if there is an answer to this that somebody has, can you tell me so that we can walk away too and just all do this one thing? I wish I had an answer that was a silver bullet. I wish I had something other than the playbook, but I have just the playbook, which is going back to the fundamentals of take a look at where you're spending your time, take a look at where you're spending your money, and if you had to really say, I can only do these 3 things, what would those 3 things be? And I think that rigor is really what gets you there. One of the traps I often find myself falling in, or we all fall in, is that we want to do so many things. There's so many great ideas out there that you end up splitting not only your time, but you end up splitting your focus, right? So you're not able to really hone in and say, like, gun to your head, what is the 1 or 2 thing that you think is going to move the needle here? And getting everyone aligned and running at those 1 or 2 things. Again, going back to your question of early stage, I think that is so incredibly important. At Row, we are fortunate, right? Even if we launch new products, we have the ecosystem of Row that we get to live and breathe in. So it's like launching a business, but with help, right? With support and infrastructure already built in. But when you're really starting without that focus and that willingness to not do things and say no to other things so you can say yes to the most important things are going to be the things that matter. And then tactically, it is looking at where your customers are coming in, what the funnel and touch points are, and where are the opportunities. Right? Is it, if you are an SEM-driven company, or that is a high percentage of your spend, looking at that funnel and saying, should I focus more on my landing pages? Where are my users dropping off? Or is it the fact that I need to start iterating more on my paid social creative because I see room to run and expand here? So taking that strategic time to really look at that and be critical about where you should focus and take your bets.
And I just want to add on to that too. I think at one point I was having a conversation with a company's product and their social media and their strategy, and the person that was running their strategy was saying that it's okay to just do the same thing over and over again. If it's working, go ahead and put the same content up there because it's clearly something is happening. Is that another type of tactic? Don't get really mired in necessarily having to do something different and recreating the wheel.
I think that there is something to it. Also, the platforms are changing. Right?
Right.
Facebook and Meta and all those things they're constantly iterating. So yes, and make sure that you're paying attention to the changing of the platforms and that practice is still true to form. I do think, though, there is something to, you don't need drastic change just for the sake of drastic change. I think you really need to root in to, again, who your customer is. And an example from the past, and not necessarily from Row, used to work at a company called Greats. They sold direct-to-consumer men's sneakers. They were acquired by Steve Madden a while back. And we would launch new shoes every other week. A drop of new shoes, full photo shoots, full marketing campaigns every other week.
That's a lot.
And the best performing shoe was a pair of white sneakers on rugs. And we ended up iterating just white sneakers on different rugs. And that was, we went to the store and literally just shot them on a bunch of different rugs, beat out every single new drop we had ever done. So to your point of like, do something that works, you know, we did the drops and they served a purpose, but really the thing that worked was the thing that worked. And so being willing to accept that is also important as
And
well.
not spend the money. I mean, if it works, it works. I'm sure that photo shoot maybe cost, what, $500 or maybe a little bit more.
I mean, literally, I think we ordered rugs from Amazon and there was just like a little rug corner in the office. It was very
So
cute.
probably even less. Oh my gosh. Kristin, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. It was so enlightening, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Enjoy lunch, everybody.